are live. Hey, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I'm so excited to welcome live from Australia tonight, Megan Goldin, joining us for this exclusive pre-launch event, giving us the inside scoop on her brand new red hot book, Stay Awake. Megan, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about your book.
Thank you. My book, Stay Awake, is about a woman with amnesia. And everything that she remembers, she writes on her hands, including the words stay awake and wake up. And the book is how she kind of figures out what's going on, which involves her discovering that there's a murder. And at the murder scene, the same words written on her hand appear at the murder scene.
Well, that is quite a crazy premise, Megan, and I can't wait to get into every delicious detail. But first, I just want to welcome everyone. So we're broadcasting live to 6 destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So wherever you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. And it is Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder. We're going to make them a little less painful for you. So if you've been here before, you know the drill. You get to ask our featured author anything. And if you're new, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Any questions for Megan, get them going in the comments. Marcy, welcome to the conversation, saying hi from Hull, Massachusetts. Marcy, what a pleasure to have you here tonight. Lecha Haney joining us from Texas, saying hello, ladies. Lecha, always a pleasure to see you pop up. Thank you so much. We have a mysterious user. If you're watching from a private Facebook group, you can stay mysterious. This is Mystery and Thriller Mavens after all, or you can enable privacy settings in the link above the video. And click over your choice. Anissa, welcome to the conversation, saying hello, Sara and Megan from South Carolina. I'm trying to stay awake. Yes, absolutely. Anissa, what a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Lecha Haney saying this sounds so intriguing already. Lecha, right? What a crazy cool premise. Vicky Carter, welcome to the conversation, saying, I can't wait for this book. Vicky, very cool. Tell us what you're excited about in the comments. Catch a clue. Hey, Wendy, saying, hi, Sara and Megan. Wendy, what a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Lynn joining us from Philadelphia, saying hi. Lynn, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Alicia saying congratulations on your pre-launch. Thanks for hosting. My pleasure, Alicia. And let's talk about this crazy premise that sounds so intriguing. So Megan, give us the inside scoop. Why amnesia? How did this happen?
It started off as a kind of a writing challenge to myself. I wanted to write a novel, a thriller, in which the main character has amnesia and the book's written first person from their perspective. And it was, I guess, in some ways, it was inspired by the film Memento, for those who've seen that film, which after I saw that film, I was totally disoriented, and I'd never experienced that before. It was the kind of disorientation you feel getting off a roller coaster, except it was after reading a book. So I just wanted to try and create that experience through a novel, and it just seemed like a really challenging thing to do. And I just started writing it. And because of the way I write, I don't really have a lot. I don't plan a lot, and I just kind of go with it. So I just started writing pretty much the first chapter in the novel and sort of put myself in my character's shoes and let the plot take me in all sorts of different directions.
Ooh, well, very cool to get to share the inception moment, and to also hear a bit about your process. Thank you so much for sharing that, Megan. Sydney, welcome to the conversation. Joining us from YouTube, she's saying that she finished the arc this past week. I loved it. It was a major slump buster for her. Sydney, I love your adorable little kitty cat, and I'm so happy to hear that it was a slump buster. Yeah, because this book is really different. We have because our main character every time she falls asleep every night, she wakes up and is a brand new world. She remembers nothing, but she writes these notes to herself, all, like, stay awake, or I forget everything when I fall asleep. And it is very disorienting and terrifying. And then when people start dropping dead with those same notes scrawled on the grass on the room of the murder room, it's terrifying. So good slump buster indeed. Leisha would like to know, Megan, which character was the hardest to write about and why? Great question, Leisha.
I think that Liv was the hardest because a lot of the book is written from her perspective and she has amnesia. And I had to make sure that she didn't know anything that she wasn't supposed to know. So we had to do a lot of when we were editing it, we really had to kind of think, would she know this? and so that was very challenging. And just generally, a character like that who's gone through a really difficult time, and she's had this past trauma, and she's really discovering all of that slowly through the novel. It was just challenging to try and develop that character in that way, where you're so limited because she has amnesia and because she is kind of dealing with the world as an amnesiac. So it was very challenging to write, both in terms of the character Liv and in terms of the structure as well. In some ways, I felt like that book was kind of written backwards. And so, so I set myself a tough writing project, and it was tough.
And when you say, I'm interested to hear when you say in some ways it felt like the book was written backwards. Tell us a little more about that.
Well, in many ways, the opening of the book is really kind of, in some ways, the end. And so in many ways, she's kind of going back in time without necessarily going back in time, as she rediscovers her life and what happened. And it's also in a very short timeline. So the book itself only takes place over about 24 hours as well. So yeah, it was challenging structurally. I don't know, as a reader, it's hard for me to look at my books as a reader because I've written them, but structurally it was a challenging novel to write, and Liv was certainly a challenging character.
Yes, I can imagine that Liv was a challenging character because, she shows up at her work and there's all these new people, and the office has been renovated and redecorated, and only one person remembers her because they've had major turnover. So it must have been very challenging to write her. Did you interview amnesiacs? Did you speak to neuroscientists? What was your process like?
I did a lot of research. I did speak to neuroscientists. I didn't speak to amnesiacs, although funnily enough, just recently somebody I know had an episode of amnesia. It was too late to interview them. It just happened a few weeks ago. So, but I did I read a lot of articles and books and whatever I could get my hands on to try and understand what a person goes through in that scenario. And a lot of it when I write is just putting myself in that position of my character and sort of thinking about, well, what would you do in this situation?
So what did the neuroscientists say? I've never met anyone who had amnesia. I mean, it would be so terrifying to not remember. What was the most surprising thing you learned in your research?
Well, one of the things that I learned, which I'd actually put it in the book, and then I was doing because I research as I write, and then I read some articles about somebody who'd actually gone through a very similar type of amnesia to Liv. And she did exactly what Liv did, which is that she kind of kept a daily journal that she then referred to when she woke up, because it was the only way that she could. Every time she regained her memory, she had to kind of relearn what had happened to her since the last time. So she kept this kind of running commentary of her life so that she could, just renew, instead of having memories, it's kind of reading about what actually happened to you so that so it was interesting because I actually found that out after I'd written that into a book. And I think that when you put yourself in your character's situation, most people behave logically, and there's sort of certain logical things you do in situations. So it was interesting that she'd done that.
Very cool. Anissa would like to know, Megan, do you lead your characters or do they lead you? If yes, is it different at different phases of your writing process? Cool question, Anissa.
It is a cool question. My characters lead me. They lead me into the craziest situations, and usually once they've led me somewhere, I can't go back. I'm like stuck wherever they've taken me, and sometimes it can be a really awkward place to be from a plot perspective. And you kind of, it's not the ideal way to have taken the plot, but that's where the character is, and so I have to kind of go with it. And I suppose the only time that I might lead the character is, is sort of towards a resolution near the end of the book, because obviously, we want a resolution, and we need to tie everything up and have a really nice, satisfying ending. So sometimes I kind of have to sort of remind the character where we're heading, but it's very much character led.
Very cool. Anissa, thank you for the great question. And Megan, thank you for sharing your process, giving a glimpse in here. Loving this conversation. Christine, welcome to the conversation, saying, I loved your book. She said, I read the ARC, an advanced reader copy as well. I loved the premise and it is very unique. Christine, right? It is very unique. And I loved that as well. Thank you for joining us and for your comment. Mary Beth, welcome to the conversation. Such a pleasure to see your name pop up. She would like to know, Megan, what is the easiest and the hardest part of the writing process for you? And how do you handle those tough writing days? Great question, Mary Beth.
Tough writing days, chocolate.
Okay. I
have to say, it's like cigarettes with me. Instead of lighting up a cigarette, it's a chocolate. That does help sometimes give me this energy boost, because it's amazing how much energy you use writing when you're actually sitting and you're not active. But I think the brain just requires a lot of energy. So that is that's my bad habit. But writing can be really grueling. I often compare it to running a marathon, and you just have to keep going. And there are days where you just don't want to. And and in this book, in Stay Awake, there are days where I really kind of sweated blood to get the book going. But it's a discipline. That's probably the hardest part of writing a novel, is just going with it every day, whether you're in the mood or not in the mood, whether you have ideas or not. Sometimes when I have writer's block, I found that the best thing to do is just to leave it and to go and do something else, like painting the garden fence, which is what I once did with another book. And that kind of thing helps. Actually, it really helps your mind think about things. Just sometimes when you're not concentrating on the book and you're doing something else, you suddenly come up with ideas. But you just have to persevere, and in the end, you get there. You'll end up with a manuscript, and that kind of comes to the easier part of the book for me, which is the once you have a draft, then you're editing it, and often it requires a lot of dramatic edits, but it's so much easier once you actually have it there. You have a complete product, and it's not a you know that you've got a manuscript, you can do something with it now, and it might require a lot of rewriting and lots of editing, but to me that part is actually a lot more fun, because it's kind of like, if you think about it, you're building the house is the first draft, and then decorating is is the subsequent draft. So it's a lot more fun decorating than doing the building, right?
Oh, that's so interesting. So for me, editing is the worst part. I like the creating. I like to start with nothing. I'm a builder. I like the building. I don't like the decorating. That's the hard part for me. Oh my gosh, I'm loving this conversation. So you handle your tough days with chocolate. What kind of chocolate? Milk, dark, white, fruit, nuts, plain, salted. What's your fancy?
Oh, well, Australia has terrific chocolate, and so my favorite over the writing of Stay Awake was it's called Caramilk, which is a white caramelized chocolate, which is really yum. So I hope they bring it to the US.
Caramilk is so it's like a caramel milk chocolate.
It's a white chocolate that's caramelized, so it's kind of a dark yellow.
Okay, I've never heard of that. I that sounds fabulous. Okay, cool. Yeah, I hope they bring that to the US for sure. Thank you for the great question, Mary Beth and Megan. Thank you for the answer. I was Christine would like to know, have you ever known anyone who had amnesia? My son was in a car accident and still cannot remember an hour after the accident. Fascinating. So you mentioned that after writing this book, you have someone in your life who does have amnesia. Tell us about that.
Oh, a friend of a friend who was on holiday and woke up one day and didn't know where they were for like 24 hours. They had no idea where they were. They were on this tropical island in Queensland, and they didn't know how they got there. And I don't know. They landed up having to be taken to hospital, and within a day, it had resolved themselves, and nothing had happened to prompt it. There was no. It was not like they were knocked on the head or anything. The
How
human
bizarre.
brain can be a very It can be a
So
very
no traumatic brain injury, no car accident, no concussion, nothing, but just woke up and didn't know where they were and had to go to the hospital because how bizarre for 24 hours.
Yeah, well, roughly for one day. But I think we've all had amnesia in that anyone who's had surgery, for example, usually when you come out of say an anesthetic, there's a period of amnesia where you're conscious but you don't remember what happened. I think, I don't know, a few years ago, I think I had like a minor surgical thing and came out of I woke up and whatever. And then afterwards I was told, oh, you were asking for whatever, your husband or whatever. And I didn't remember that. So it is weird that you have these blackout periods.
That's a good point. Yes, I hadn't thought of it in that way, but you're right. Sydney says she loves the detectives in this book. Yeah, the detectives were really fun. She wants to know, would you consider featuring them in future books? Cool question.
Yeah, I do. I also love the detectives, and I reckon that that's a possibility. I don't have any sort of fixed ideas, but it's kind of a problem when you have a novel and you write a novel and you have a great character, and then you think this character is really good. Like you could really take this character somewhere, and of course the novel ends, but the character is kind of complex and has a really interesting backstory. And Darcy was in the military, and she's got a lot of she's carrying a lot of sort of psychological baggage from that, and I think I could do a lot with her. So maybe. And
Yeah,
by the way, somebody else wrote to me about that. So a few people have said they'd love to see more about her in particular.
yay. Okay, so Sydney and Sarah and others are voting for more Darcy, so we would love to see that. Wendy, catch a clue, would like to know, Megan, how long did it take you to write this book? I was wondering that too.
This book took me longer than my other books in that I wrote it over COVID, the first year of COVID, and here in Australia we had a lockdown that went on for pretty much forever. It felt like it was forever. And so it was a very difficult time to write. We weren't allowed to leave our houses and all of that, and I have a family. So it took me over a year, I would say, and I had to do a lot of rewriting as well with it because it was really, really, I set myself a writing challenge before COVID, and it would have been challenging under any circumstances, but then I had to write it over COVID, and that was a really tough period. So just with the lockdowns and homeschooling my kids while writing and all that crazy stuff. So yeah, that one, Stay Awake, took me about a year.
Soup to nuts, start to
Yeah.
finish, A to Z, through the editing and everything, 1 year.
Probably including the editing, maybe a couple of like 14 months or something. Yeah.
Wow, that still seems very fast to me. But Megan, you're coming. So everyone who doesn't know, Megan is coming from a journalism background. So she was on the ground in the Middle East, covering both conflicts and also peacekeeping. So I was thinking, as you were saying, that sometimes your characters took you into kind of crazy places. I thought to myself, crazy places are not unknown to you. You've probably been, you having been on the ground in the Middle East during some tough times. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was always my dream to be a journalist. And when I finished college, I went to the Middle East, and I actually started working as a intern for the Associated Press. And yeah, and landed up then working as a TV producer, and then I was a correspondent as well, and lived there and covered a lot of interesting stories for about more than a decade. So, a lot of wars, but a lot of other things too. Lots of, peace negotiations and meeting historical figures. And I also did some really fun stories that I always loved, which was a lot of archaeology. I always loved archaeology. So I always tried to squeeze in an archaeology story here or there while I was there as well.
Wow, I love archaeology too. So one of my goals is to someday go to Egypt and see the pyramids and explore. I mean, I love history and I love really old things, so archaeology is a natural fit for me. So tell us, have you had some? What's your coolest archaeological or other journalistic experience? Oh, Christine saying very cool. She studied journalism as well. She comes from a long line of military, so she understands the travel to tough places. Exactly. Exactly. So tell us a little more about that, Megan.
Yeah, so I went to some really amazing places when I was in the Middle East. And I remember one time, occasionally we'd go to peace conferences and stuff, and like one time we went in a small executive jet because it was the only way of getting us there. It was a peace conference in Alexandria, which is part of Egypt that a lot of people don't go to, and sort of flying along the Red Sea. And because it was an executive jet, it was like about 12 journalists in this small little plane. And by the way, I'm not a great flyer. I'm a bit of a nervous wreck, but it was just the most stunning scenery. Flying along sort of the Red Sea and the Sinai Peninsula, and then coming up along the Suez, and then flying into Alexandria, which was just like this very vibrant city. So yeah, lots of amazing things over those years.
Wow, I'm loving this. I'm loving this. Sarah White, welcome to the conversation, saying hi from Florida. Um, Sydney saying, wow, I would love to see archaeology in a future book. Fingers crossed. Ooh, that would be so cool. Maybe your next book could take you to the Middle East, a land you know well, a culture you know well. Sydney, great idea. Any chance of that, Megan?
It is something that I'd love to do that too. So, and I have a vague idea, but I just don't know quite. I haven't figured out how to. This particular mystery seems unsolvable to me, so I have to mull it over a bit longer. But I do have some ideas in that direction.
Ooh, I'm excited. You heard it here first on Mystery and Thriller Mavens, y'all. You heard it here first. Remember that. Julie, welcome to the conversation, saying, I loved this book and it kept me up late reading. So we might say that Julie stayed awake, reading, stay awake. I love it. Julie, tell us what you loved about this book. I know what I love, but tell us what you loved. Very cool. And Sarah White saying, I love all of your books. Yay. Sarah, tell us what you love about Megan's books. Fascinated to hear. Ooh, Anissa wants to know, Megan, what books are on your nightstand? Cool question.
Oh, whenever everyone asks me that question, I always have a mental blank. But I love reading thrillers, obviously, but I also love reading sort of literary fiction. So I think at the moment, one of my favorite writers is John le Carre. And so I have a few of his, which I've read, but I like to reread his books. And John Grisham, Lee Child. There's endless. I mean, there's so many wonderful writers at the moment. I mean, and just generally, I love, in terms of sort of more literary fiction, I love reading Steinbeck, for example. And East of Eden is one of my favorite books, which I must have read about half a dozen times, and I've seen the movie several times. The problem is, I don't know if other writers have the same issue, but I find it hard to read while I'm writing because it kind of starts intruding on I'm afraid of like cross pollination. I'm afraid that somehow I'll pick up stuff that I didn't realize, or it kind of takes me out of the world that I've sort of building on the page. So the time that I read is usually when I finished writing, and then I'll have like a few weeks in between, and I'll sort of read like 10 books in 3 weeks or something, or as many as I can, basically. And then when I start writing again, I stop. So it's a bit of a juggling act.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I like your commitment to artistic integrity, being careful not to get any cross pollination. So thank you for that. So many great questions. Okay, we're gonna get to every single one of them. So first up, I want to get over here to we have Aline Cogdell, who is one of my favorite mystery journalists and reviewers in the audience, and she shares that she reviewed your book right here for the Sun Sentinel. Aline has been on the show twice, sharing her favorite picks. She's an amazing reviewer. So everyone, here's the link. Be sure to check out Aline's review of Stay Awake. Aline, thank you so much for joining us. You know I love all of your reviews. Christine saying, "Wow, I cannot imagine having amnesia. I know it would be so scary, right?" We have a mystery user saying, "Hello." I bet that's Leslie from Canada because that's her signature Canadian. Hello, Leslie. Welcome to the conversation. You are right on time. Aline, our favorite reviewer, saying she loved the escape room as well. She wants to know, are there any series in the works, Megan?
Oh, thank you, Aline. I really appreciate the review as well. I have The Night Swim, which is my previous novel with Rachel Crowell, who's a true crime podcaster. So I have actually written another Rachel Crowell novel, which I'm in the final stages of editing, and hopefully that'll come out next year. So she's another character that we have Darcy, and I'd love to do something with her, but I loved Rachel when I wrote The Night Swim, and I felt like I wanted to do more with her. And as a true crime podcaster, I think it just opens up so many new adventures and mysteries for her to solve as well.
My mic was not on there. Yay, I'm saying, in case anyone wasn't able to click Aline's review, I'm going to post it right here. Aline's review of Stay Awake. So check it out. Aline writes really fabulous reviews for the Sun Sentinel, Publishers Weekly, Shelf Awareness, many, many other places. So I'll pop that in the comments as well. Oh my goodness. Okay, great question. Mary Beth wants to know, Megan, what do you hope people will leave your books feeling or learning?
I hope that my books deliver things on a few different levels. So that's thrillers. So the main thing is to just have a really great read and for it to be entertaining. Like with all thrillers, you want to kind of get the heart rate up a fair bit. So, it sort of needs to be a kind of visceral type of reading experience. But at the same time, I hope, maybe it's my journalism coming in, but often my books have cover issues and I try and sort of bring in information about them, but within the narrative. And so I hope that maybe you go away from it learning something, or it poses questions that go beyond the actual thriller, about issues. The Night Swim, for example, was about sexual assault. So I think, and so it opened up, I hope, a lot of thoughts about, what happens in those scenarios to the victims and the judicial process and all of that. But foremost, they're thrillers, and they're really about having, a really great read and just enjoying it and having a blast. And then if you can get something more out of it, then all the better.
All the better. Vicky saying, I asked that question. I'm sorry, Vicky. I'm getting questions from 6 different locations streaming in, so I apologize if I missed your question. I'll go back and check, see if I can find it. She said, how do you feel as when we as readers devour them? How do you feel when we finish so quickly? Yeah, very interesting question. So if it takes you 14 months, as you described it, as a sometimes grueling marathon, and then we stay up maybe binge reading it in 24 hours. How do you feel about that? Great question, Vicky.
I think when it comes to writing thrillers, or maybe any book, if somebody likes the book so much that they can't put it down, and that is the ultimate compliment, right? That is absolutely the ultimate compliment, that you can't stop reading. But it's one of those things. Writing just takes a heck of a long time to do. I think I once read, Stephen King, I think, has written books within weeks. I mean, my, hat off to him, because I don't know how he does it. Probably doesn't sleep. But generally it does take a long time. But at the end of the day, the goal is to have a really great read. So if you can't put it down, then that is the ultimate compliment, I think, certainly to any thriller writer.
I love it. Christine would like to know, does your family read your books? And do you have a favorite author? Two cool questions. Let's go through those one by one.
My family does read my books. They don't usually read my books until after they've come out. With the exception of my mum and my dad. My dad is like, he's a retired lawyer in his late 80s, and he's probably read every crime novel ever written. He's a voracious reader, and he's also a very blunt person. And so if I give him a manuscript and he hates it, he will tell me that it's terrible. And then at least I know that whether I'm on track or not. Because if my dad tells me it's really good, then I know it's good. And if he tells me it's not good or whatever, then I know that I'm going in the wrong direction. And I give it to my mum because I think she'd get jealous if my dad was the only one who got it. So, so they both get an early draft just for their feedback. And then everyone else gets a copy of, my siblings and the rest of my family afterwards. But my kids are too young to read them at the moment. It's so hard because there's so many, authors that I love. But I would say that for me, one of the greatest thriller writers, I mean, it's more espionage, but it's just is John le Carre. It's just, every time I read his books, it's like a masterclass. And another one, Ian McEwan as well. He's not a thriller writer, but again, it's just reading him. It's like just taking a masterclass in writing. So, and you can read those books on different levels. You can read them as a reader, but if you're a writer and you want to kind of understand all sorts of ideas about writing, you can read it with a really critical eye and look for structure and how they do their dialogue and characters and stuff. And you learn so much from them.
Oh, I love that. And Vicky, I have found your question. I'm sorry, I missed it before. She said, I've listened to The Escape Room and recently The Night Swim. I have pre-ordered Stay Away. She was wondering how long you work on your books. And she said, a lot of authors say they spend months writing a book and then we avid readers finish it in a day or two. And she was just wondering what your thoughts are on that, which we just did answer. So Vicky, I apologize for missing this the first time. And thank you for following up on that. And thank you for joining us today and being part of the conversation. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate everyone being here. So thank you so much. Let me just make sure I'm not missing anybody else's. Thank you so much for your patience, everybody. And so many great questions are coming in. Marcy says, it is so interesting to hear how authors dealt with the writing process during COVID. Yeah, so you were busy homeschooling your kids. It's the pace being in lockdown and not being able to go out, and homeschooling slowed you down a bit. So are you back on the speed train now, Megan?
I'm not. I feel like, I don't know. I think it's with everything these days. Everything seems to take longer. And since COVID, since lockdowns, at least, people are working from home a lot more. So I've got my husband sometimes works from home. It's like, this is my office. Go away. I don't want anybody here. Whatever. There's always something. My little son, was sick last week, and I think if I remember when I was writing Stay Awake as well, during a critical part, he was in hospital for a few days for nothing major, but anyway, life just kind of takes over sometimes, and And when you're writing, working to a deadline, there's always things coming up. But certainly over the lockdowns, it was very difficult. And the only quiet place that I could find in my home was my car. So Stay Awake was written, large parts of it were written in the car, I have to say.
Wow.
And then my little son, especially, who was in primary school, was in grade 3, would come over to the car. Mum, how do you spell this? And can you help me with this maths question? So you'd have to put the manuscript aside. And
oh my gosh, that's
yeah.
so funny. I will picture you writing in your car from now on, as that was the only quiet place you could find. So, and I'll picture Megan just typing away in the driver's seat. Nikki Miracle, welcome to the conversation, saying she loved this book. So Nikki's an amazing bookstagrammer, book reviewer, and she does her reviews under Graciously Booked on Instagram. So I'll pop her link in the comments as well. Nikki, I love all your reviews. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Julie saying the story, OMG, and fabulous writing. Thank you so much for that, Julie and Megan. Loving to see everyone so excited about your writing. Y'all, I want to remind you that the books are out. The book is out tomorrow. I popped the pre-order link in the comments. Anissa noting, interesting that you named all male writers, Megan. Yeah, what about that? Do you tend to resonate more with male writers?
No, I read a lot of female writers. I don't know. It's just those are the names that always pop into my head. But actually, most of the time these days, I'm reading female writers. And actually, I didn't mention Gillian Flynn, who writes terrific thrillers and is incredibly talented as well. So I read whatever gets me going in the first few chapters, regardless of who it's written by.
Anissa is a librarian, so nothing is getting past her. I love it. Vicky saying, each one of your books seems to get better and better. You are such a fabulous writer. I have introduced you to 2 of my book clubs. Okay, Vicky, I love that you are in not just 1, but 2 book clubs, and that you have brought Megan's work to her. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much for doing that. Yay. Aline saying she also loved the night swim. Very cool. And I'm not sure if this is Nikki or Leslie saying they loved the night swim as well. We loved Rachel. Aline saying yay for Rachel. Thank you guys so much for all these wonderful comments. And it looks like we are Sarah saying she loves your books because she's never bored, keeping that pace going there. Christine saying she loved both of those books. You have a very unique eye. Very cool. Aline saying she loved this discussion. Thank you for doing these, and for Murder by the Book for hosting. My pleasure, Aline. Thank you for joining us. Ooh, Julie wants to know, this is a great question. Megan, do you read your own reviews? I need to know too.
I do sometimes. And then other times it's like looking into, I don't know, they say that you shouldn't, right? So I do sometimes, and then sometimes I think, no, I really shouldn't, because it can be scary. And there's not much you can do about it once you've written the novel, right?
So do you read them, or do you have the strength?
I do sometimes. I tend to read like the newspaper reviews and that sort of thing. And sometimes I'll read reader reviews, and it can be really useful sometimes, because it's good to know what people liked and what they didn't like. And it can be very daunting as well. So I have my, occasionally, but I try not to.
Good to know. Good to know. Vicky saying it's so wonderful. I love all of my new to me Australian writers, and I'm so glad that I have found Megan. Her books are so awesome, and I'm so happy you are interviewing her tonight. Oh, Vicky, thank you so much, and thank you for being here with us. I appreciate that so much, and love having you be part of the conversation. Y'all, the book is out tomorrow, so pre-order it tonight. Here's the link one more time. And I see we are over our time, but the conversation has been so juicy, it's been impossible to cut. a cutoff. Vicky wants to know, Megan, I wanted to know if you like Michael Robotham, a fellow Australian author.
Yes, I do. He's a terrific writer. Yeah, he's also one of those authors who can learn so much from reading his books. He lives in Sydney, and I've been at a few writers' festivals here in Australia where I've met him and where he's spoken. And yeah,
Very
he's great.
cool.
And he also has a similar background to me in that he was a journalist as well.
Loving that. Nikki Miracle, aka Graciously Booked on Instagram, saying she loved the Night Swims writing. Nikki, thank you so much. Anissa saying thank you for the lovely chat. And y'all, what a perfect note to end on. Christine saying thank you. Great discussion as always. So wonderful to be here with all my Mystery and Thriller Maven fam. I love y'all. Don't forget to join the Mystery and Thriller Maven Facebook group, free and open to all. Megan, congratulations. Happy Pub Day. Everybody pre-order the book tonight. Here it is. And the good folks at Murder by the Book will ship it out to you tomorrow. Thank you all for joining us. Megan, thanks for joining us live from Australia. That is a wrap on Mystery Monday. I will see you next Monday, because Mondays can be murder. Have a great night, y'all.
Thank you.